that usually try to tell them, starting with the fireplace here. There is a legend that when Abraham Lincoln was shot, they painted the fireplaces black. I think it was more apt to be the mantle was painted black, but you can see this is black here now. So, also in the Civil War period, we have this log here, and we ask them what this is, and they say a mushroom and so on. But that's where a shell exploded. There's a piece of the shell, and there's a ball from the shell. And so that came from the Battle of Chickamauga, which is a picture up here. Then we go into the Minutemen. Chelmsford had Minutemen, and all the towns around here, Westford and Concord and so on, and they went to the Concord Bridge. Now, the Concord Bridge was, there were more than one, of course, but they were made out of wood, and some years ago they took the wooden bridge down and made a replica of steel and concrete. But the selectmen of the town of Concord gave a piece of the last wooden bridge to each town that sent Minutemen to the Concord fight. And that's what it says on this piece of paper here. So this is the piece of the Concord Bridge that belongs to the Chelmsford for sending Minutemen to the Concord fight. Now, we also have here foot warmer, and we have several of them, and sometimes people in another room explain it. You know what they were for. You kept your feet warm in church. The women could by shoveling coals in here. The kids always say, well, it's to put a bird in or something, and or it's a lantern, and they have no concept. Of course, sometimes they said even they would take a dog into church so you could keep your feet warm. Now, over here is the Chelmsford glass, and it's the largest collection of glass like this. This was not made to sell. This is window glass. It was made over in Middlesex Village, and the house where some of the people lived is still there, and that's on the National Register. But these are whimsies, and the story is that the glass blowers would make these things just to keep practicing. When they made the window glass, they would blow a large cylindrical thing like this, only much bigger. Then they'd slit it down and put it in the oven and flatten it out. That's how they made the window glass. But some of these things would be useful, you see. The rolling pin, the girls usually recognize that, the cream pitcher, milk pitcher, and so on. Others are just for fun, like the hat. And that's a crazy mixed up tobacco pipe. There's a cigar holder. I usually ask them what they think about the egg there, and they say, oh, that's for a light, an electric light. But of course, that's a darning egg. Now, excuse me. Try to get, if they have time, well, before we finish the glass, this is the last pot that the Sanders melted in. You built a very hot wood fire, and the last glass is still in there from the glass works before it moved up to New Hampshire, went up to New Hampshire. And there's a plot which is down there on Baldwin Street off of Westford and Middlesex, where the glass house was, and it came off there where Alexander's Market is in Middlesex Village. And the road is a little different now. And these people here are the glass family that this glass came from. Mrs. Turner finally gave it to us. Gardner Turner was in Lowell High School when I went to Lowell High. He was there then. And this has the story of the Hirsch family. He was descended from them. It was made by the little girl Henrietta Hirsch when she was 10 years old. And her father had already died then, and one of her brothers. And so her mother and other brothers are there. So that's the glass. Now this here is a stereopticon, and some of you have used a stereopticon. And you get a 3D picture by looking here. But this, I usually let them look at this if we have time. And that shows Chelmsford Common the way it was back in 1860. And it's sort of interesting to me because that's what I'll be talking about next month, because my great-grandfather built that with his son. So that's that. Now, there are other things. If you have time, you can talk about, Clarence, there's things here. Try to tell them about this. This is a sparking lamp. Do you all know what sparking is?
Yes, you do.
Yes, we do. With the little kids now.
Well, when the boy used to call on a girl, he'd sit by the fire. That was Sparky. And the story is that they would light this lamp, and when the lamp went out, it was time for him to go home. If the old man didn't like the boy, he'd only put a little oil in it. This is the apron of Mr. Hirsch here. He was a mason, came from Germany, and that's his contract over there in Germany, if you can read German. So that's about all you can do in this room in 6 minutes. And he took over when Henry Parham died and completed the Chelmsford history and spent a tremendous amount of time doing it. The bottles there are some we sold here a few years ago to raise some money. They're hand-blown glass bottles, and they have, most of them have Chelmsford scenes on them, like the schoolhouse and the monument and the clock in the church and so forth. But there's a copy of the Chelmsford history there that Wilson Waters did so much work on.
What about this dish here? What's that for?
Well, that's just a dish. It's just an ornamental dish. We have many, we have a platter that was from the 2nd century celebration. You remember in 1955 we had the tercentenary and the 2nd century celebration. I don't know if it's in there now. And these things cover a period of 150 years or so. So that's about all you can tell in this room in 6 or 7 minutes.
Everybody here? Well, this room has been known as the keeping room. When the early houses were built, they built around a central chimney. And the chimney was always laid out first and then built up. Then the rooms were added as the family grew. First of all, there were 2 rooms. The room that we call our parlor was the original kitchen. That was the keeping room. And the opposite room here was added on the next. Then there were 2 rooms for bedrooms upstairs. And you'll notice that all of the 4 rooms open onto the central chimney, which is here. And there are places on the chimney where the bricks are pulled out a bit. That was known as the witch's staircase. And the people could climb around the chimney on those bricks that were poking out in order to check the flues and to clean the chimney if necessary. So when the children come, they're always interested in the witch's staircase, that's called. And that you can open the little door under the front stairs to show them where the chimney is. That is not the original entrance. The original entrance to the chimney was from the parlor, where the china closet is now. That opened out into the chimney. There were 2. This room was added after the other rooms, and there was it was partitioned off for 2 bedrooms, which were used as sick rooms. And a sick room on this side, perhaps, and the boning room on that section. And they had them down here by the big fireplace, where there would be more heat, and the patients could keep warm and comfortable. The upper rooms were never heated, and there were small fires just built in the fireplace, just to take the chill off the rooms, and then they were put out because of danger from the cold snapping.
What, no electric blankets?
No electric blankets, no bathtubs either. Let's see, when the Murrays came here to live, they took away and opened up this room used it as a keeping room or a big kitchen. And they kept the big fireplace here. The fireplaces were used for cooking. There were no stoves. And the earliest settlers had only the barest amount of equipment necessary. They had heavy cast iron that they brought with them from England or wherever they came, and they used it. There were kettles that hung on a crane, heavy cast iron, and this one here is called the Dutch oven. I guess I won't pick it up, but it has a cover, and it would set, you could set it right on the coals and cook with it, and even bake bread on the cover. By putting coals, could be covered over with coals and set bread to bake on the cover. So also, beside the fireplace was the beehive oven. And I always told my children, I asked the children why it was called a beehive oven. And I told them it was not a place to keep the bees. So although we have had them here, they flied out the openings, but they used the beehive oven for their baking, for breads and beans and pies and things. They would build a fire right in here, inside this upper section, and keep it going long enough so that the bricks would get white hot. And you've heard the expression, white hot, and that's where it comes from. When the bricks were hot enough to bake bread, then they could put the bread in. The ashes had to be shoveled out, and this was an iron peel, another word for shovel. And you'll notice the decoration on the handle. The early settlers had nothing pretty, like some dishes and pretty things to work with, so they made their things beautiful. And you'll notice in so many, woodenware, tinware, everything has a little decoration on it. Well, the ashes were shoveled out and put down below to cool and keep, and then were placed in a barrel to save for soap making. When water was poured through the ashes, it comes out with as lye, and they made very strong lye soap for work in scrubbing floors or in the barns especially, but not for clothing. And we have a small cake of soap in a little soap box on the table, you'll see there, that we made up here that is not lye soap, that is good hand soap. And it's made by saving the fats from cooking and so forth. I won't give you all the ingredients. When the oven was hot enough, the loaves of bread were placed on a wooden peel. This is an especially fine one. It's all one piece of wood, hand carved. The peel was oiled and the loaf put on and put in the back part of the oven, and with a little shake of the hands it would slide off. And the worst trick was to get the bread out, to slide it underneath and pull it out. There were other types of things that we used. This is a pie fork. You set your pie plate on here. This really isn't big enough, but and then you could just slide it right in there. So I won't go into any more detail on these things. They also had tinware, and this one especially is very valuable. It's a tin kitchen. It was used for roasting meat, and we had used it up here many times. You put the roast or the meat on the spit and close it, set it up against the fire. The back is open, and that will cook. Then at about every 15 minutes, the rod, the spit can be turned here. Fall out. And there are a circle of holes that go all around. So by the time you get the spit turned from all the holes, the roast should be nicely brown. Also had to be basted. And on this side there is a spout at the bottom where the liquids could be poured off. The fat that dripped down could be poured off into a dripping pan and used to spoon over the roast to keep it from drying out. This also is a oven, a reflector oven for baking pies or gingerbread or loaf cakes. And the top comes up so you can test it to see if it's done. One more thing I want to speak about is this. All the children like to guess what this is. And do any of you know?
Toaster? Toaster.
The toaster. Yes, that's what it is. But it's a special kind. This is called a flip toaster. And you put the two big thick slices of bread in here and toast one side, then with a flip of the wrist. But it's tricky. If you don't turn it just right, the bread falls out. All of the work in raising a family was done here practically in this room. They had to make their own candles, and I have a large candle mold here that was used for making candles for the meeting house. There was only one church here in town, and everybody went to it. It was the old meeting house, and this was made large candles, long, and the wax that was saved from the cooking was made into candles, and this was the candle mold for the meeting house. There were other beautiful mold, 12 mold, and the wax was poured in here. The wicks were put in first and fastened at the bottom, and then the wax poured in here and hung. There's a handle here to hang it over something, and when the candles had set, I always asked the children how they got them out, and they wouldn't pull out because the wax was hard. So I won't go into too much detail, but it was set, just dipped into a pail of warm water, enough to loosen the candles from the mold, and then they could be pulled out. That's a particularly nice candle mold. Came from the Susan S. McFarlane estate. Woodenware was used a great deal. People didn't have too many dishes, and the first early settlers used wood. And one of our finest pieces is this burl bowl. This is all hand chiseled, carved, and a burl. Do you know what a burl is? It's a knot on usually probably from a broken branch at one time, and all the marks around here show where it was carved and shaped, and it also has a little decorative line. I always like to see the little line that people put in things. Then also, we have two shoe lasts. You can guess which is the man's and which is the woman's. And they didn't need but one last for a pair of shoes. There was no left and right. And so they would they would shape their leathers, or later the rubber they used, over the lasts and make two. And then they'd fit the feet by constant wear. This is the ladies' shoe last, and I'm sure I wouldn't want to put that on my feet. We also see many of you may not know what this ball is. This is a very famous ball. One time, before there were cars, the stagecoaches came up from Boston and went through Chelmsford into New Hampshire and farther on, or to other places. And Reed's Tavern stood about where Erickson's Corner is, in the center of town. And he had a sign on the front of the store, and also it was painted on this ball. It says Reed. The ball was gilded at one time with black lettering. It says Reed. And this was hung from a pole outside the tavern to signal the stagecoach driver to stop and pick up passengers. The ball was left high on the pole if there were no passengers, and if there were, the ball was dropped to signal him to stop. When the coach driver saw the ball high on the pole, he just highballed it up through town without stopping, and that is the origin of the term highball. It has a little different meaning today. Another thing that is interesting to children is this. This was used in the kitchen. It has holes in the bottom. Can anybody guess what it is?
Lemon squeezer?
A lemon squeezer, yes. And you set it over a glass and push down. That is a handmade lemon squeezer. This is a dipper that's hand carved in one piece with a hook for hanging. And how many know what this is?
Ice pick?
A what?
Ice pick?
An ice pick. It is it's an ice pick of a kind, but it was used for chipping the ice out of horses' hooves. And they didn't have horseshoes always, and in the wintertime the ice would ball up under their feet. And so someone made this out of a rasp and set it in wood, and that was used to chop the ice from the horses' feet. And these are wooden nails called trunnels or tree nails, and they were used to fasten the rafters of the house together. And wood expands and shrinks as the weather changes, and so the rafters, the house would always be tight with these in. And many times when an old house was taken down, the rafters still had the wooden pegs in. This is the little soap box for soft soap for washing up in the kitchen. There are some cakes of lye soap here. I forgot that we had those too. The very dark colored soap. It's very strong. And this is the delicate hand soap. I want to call your attention to make linen clothes for the springtime. The wool was used for the winter clothes and the linen for summer. Linen is like this. I'll just set that there. This is linen thread. Doesn't look very pretty, but this has been combed or straightened linen comes from the flax plant, and they grew fields of flax, and then in the fall it was harvested and made into linen thread.
What about the color of that? Is that the
This is the
natural color?
This is flaxen color. You've heard about flaxen-haired girls? Well, that's taken from the color of linen. And the girls had linen-like hair, linen color. Of course, this is dark and probably dirty. So some flax would be much lighter than this.
They call them blondies today.
Yes. So this was made by the village blacksmith. It's all these spikes were forged in the forge and pounded into this heavy oak, I think it's oak board, very close together. And it's a type of comb, but I wouldn't want to comb through that linen. It's as heavy as lead. Then after the wool was prepared, it was wound on a spinning wheel, and we have the big wheel over here. I won't try to demonstrate it because it isn't strung up. But it's the wool was placed on the spindle at the end, and then as the wheel turned, the yarn would be, the thread would be pulled, much like pulling out a hair. It would be pulled and straightened at the same time, and as it was pulled, it would wind onto the wheel, and then when you came to the end, you had to reverse the wheel and wind the prepared yarn onto a spindle. And then when they had, is there a knitting ardie over there?
Oh, no, I